Thank you for joining Dr. James, Rini, and I, the Curiosity Conduit, Dana Ortiz, for a look behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Dr. Rini is a practicing psychotherapist for the last 46 years, and I am a retired law enforcement officer with 26 years experience, and am now a psychology student. Please feel free to add comments or ask questions below, and make sure to subscribe and like. Dr. Rini or I will be happy to answer any questions you have. Today, we will be discussing how faith in the unconscious empowers us and the unconscious empowers faith. This conversation may lead to feelings of inspiration and curiosity, and it could also create some inner movement. That's all welcome. Life will reveal your destiny through all opportunities you keep yourself available for. So allow yourself to stay open, and let's see what destiny delivers. Okay, so Dr. Rini, in your book, when you are talking about faith and you say faith, what does that mean?
Well, it means that the conscious mind tends to doubt or fear the unconscious. And because it doubts or fears it, loses access to it. Having faith in it gives you access to it. And faith, because the conscious mind doesn't believe in things that it can't see. And the unconscious is imperceptible, where the conscious mind is very perceptible. These words are very perceptible. Faith, not that perceptible. So faith in the unconscious gives you access to the things it can do. Like the simple thing that we all experience of trying to recall a name consciously and unable to do that, so we move on to the next thing. And then sometime later, it could be any increment of time, the name pops into your head. People like to say out of nowhere. But what's really happened is the unconscious has searched for that name. And when it finds it, it pushes it into your conscious awareness. Now, not only does that with your name, it does that with anything that you may have curiosity about consciously. We may not always recognize the answer when it comes or how it comes, but it'll tend to respond sooner or later. So having faith in the unconscious allows you to delegate more things to your unconscious. Like in therapy, a lot of times I consciously don't know really what I'm going to do with the person, but my unconscious mind does. So I don't worry about it consciously because my unconscious is going to tell me very accurately most of the time what needs to be done.
That's going to be so, I don't know what the right word is. It just, other than nice, to be able to have that relationship, especially professionally speaking with yourself.
Well, it makes things so much easier because the thing about the unconscious is we do it automatically. You know, you don't have to go back and study your letters and numbers to be able to read and write and do arithmetic. It happens automatically. And you trust it. You have faith that when you go to read this, you're going to be able to read it. So it gives you, again, access to this powerhouse, mental powerhouse that really this whole book is devoted to. And then the other part of that, the unconscious empowers faith, because the more you see it working, the more it's like, I want more of this. And the more you trust it and the more it works, you know, like if I can't think of a name, I'll stop trying because I have faith that the unconscious mind is going to deliver it to me when it can.
So I want to read a quote out of your book. It says, "Pain and pleasure, life and death, are nature's ways of carrying consciousness over new thresholds." What does this mean?
Well, I guess I like to use my dad. I call him a Rip Van Winkle because he literally slept all the time. And it would drive my mother crazy. It's very hard to have a relationship with someone who's sleeping all the time, other than when they're eating or even, watching TV, fall asleep. Then he'd get up at 11:30 and officially go to sleep. And on the weekends, he could sleep all the time. And she just kind of built a life independent of him. And he didn't like people over because they kind of disturbed him and had his ways. Then she was diagnosed with cancer. And she wasn't dead a week. And he said, now I understand all the things your mother was trying to tell me. Nothing else could carry him over to these new thresholds of understanding other than her passing and what it did to him in terms of the loneliness. He couldn't sit there and sleep all day now that she wasn't there. How ironic that when she was there, he was very comfortable sleeping. Now he feels the loneliness of him just sleeping because she's not there. And pain and pleasure, they're abundant. We experience them every day. You as a child know no fear until you live life and suffer all the pain that there is, and then you're afraid of everything in your old age. Now there are healthy ways and unhealthy ways of crossing over these thresholds. Some, create stuckness, other create growth.
Can you give an example of both?
I could.
Well, you give an example of both. I'm going to edit that out.
Well, no, don't edit that out. Have some personality here, okay? But anyway, well, in the example that I'm using with my dad, he could have chose to just start drinking to deal with her loss.
Yeah.
But he didn't. He chose to take responsibility for his regret and his mistake and became a different person. He lived 5 years longer than her, became a totally different person. All the things that she would have loved him to be. So here's where the myth making about life after death comes in. So my myth is that they're reunited in the hereafter and now are so perfect for each other because of the amount of growth that took place between the time that she died and the time that he died. So that would be the difference between using it for growth like he did or just choosing to drown your pain, not wanting to feel it, you see, because people tend to avoid pain. But in avoiding pain, you're avoiding important information.
Well, I think this really kind of ties into the next question of how do the opposing forces of pain and pleasure, life and death, shape our spiritual consciousness? So, how do you tie that in with that?
Well, again, spiritual being transcendent. In order to deal with pain, young children, when they're sexually abused, they learn to dissociate. They transport themselves to another place.
Mm-hmm.
So there's that transcendent function, and unfortunately, it's for abuse, and they do that to protect their psyche as much as they can. But when you experience pain, it can transcend you and give you higher awareness you wouldn't have. Like I had a patient one time said, I wish doctors had to undergo the procedures that they have their patients go through so that they realize how painful they are.
Well, I feel like I reached a very high level yesterday when I got my whole stomach tattooed. I was up in the heavens at one point.
Some people like pain. They get pleasure out of pain.
Yeah, but isn't that an imbalance?
It's a transversal. They've reversed that. But yes, it is. It's not considered functional. And so they're masochistic or sadistic because they get pleasure out of inducing pain.
Well, I say masochist if they like the pain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They get pleasure out of their own pain. Some people get pleasure out of other people's pain. And then life after death, we have to think, supposedly we're the only living thing that knows they're going to die. Okay, think about that. The only living thing that knows that they're going to die.
Well, I suppose that it depends on some things, though. I get your point. And I suppose that it's in your belief system. But I guess we're the only ones that know that we're going to pass on.
It's not a belief. I didn't come to that belief. That information was imparted on me. But here, we'll add another piece to it. Okay?
Add another piece. I want to hear it.
We're the only living thing that tells stories.
Hmm.
No other living thing tells stories.
I do like that.
Okay. So if you put the two together, that knows they're going to die, we know that for a fact, and has to tell stories. So the two combine because we don't know what's going to happen after we die. So when things are ambiguous, we project things into it. Okay, so those opposing forces, what we do with them, I mean, some people think, well, when we're dead, so I'm going to do whatever I want while I'm alive. You only live once, as people like to say. Okay, other viewpoints are, no, you want to live a righteous life and be rewarded in the afterlife. So we, again, tell stories of what happens between life and death because we know we're going to die.
So speaking of, I'm going to read another quote. It says, a fundamental premise of the Buddhist religion states that to live is to suffer. The Christian scriptures say that Jesus Christ suffered and died on the cross for our sins. Roman Catholic priests take vows of poverty and chastity. Most spiritual leaders teach that immoderate indulgence in the pleasures of the body is wrong. They believe that we need to deny the body excessive satisfaction in order to transform its energy into a higher spiritual energy. What does this mean to transform its energy into a higher spiritual energy?
Well, I believe I'm saying different things here. I'm showing how the opposites are transcendent. Without the two, you don't have a whole. You only have a one. And so if we look at various religions, they have stories about this universal process we all have to deal with, which is pain and pleasure and life and death. And this is, the narrative that a lot of them have come up with.
Well, and the reason why I ask this is because in previous episodes where we discussed certain things with regards to lower tier and higher tier and sexual love and all that stuff like that, and you're talking about it, and then I go to this and I read this and made me want to ask it. Okay, so it's immoderate indulgence, right? So we're talking about something that's excessive. What is excessive? You talk about in 1 or 2 episodes ago, like, heck, if we have regular orgasms, all the time, we're gonna live maybe 11 years younger one day. So,
Along the way.
along the way oh, not one day.
Right.
So, what is excessive or not? Like, how do we interpret this? And
Well,
and at what point do we're like,
it's
"Okay,
one
that's
place
too
where
much."
where science and religion differ, you see.
Okay.
Science and science isn't the only frame of reference, as I've said before. It is a frame of reference. It is a data point. The best way I can think of integrating information, that come from different sources and say different things, it's kind of like when you grow up and you look back on the past and you're able to see new truths that you couldn't see before. And so we're always in that process of developing new truths by going back and revisiting, now that we have different information, things we used to believe. And, with these opposing forces, the key is integration, not repression, not negation. It's the integration so that the two produce growth rather than decline. Because for a lot of people, the opposites create chaos and confusion. And with that, or addiction. And with that comes decline. Whereas when you integrate them, when you have them fit together where they complement each other, then that promotes growth. But there will always be opposing forces, so there will always be a need for growth.
It's good. Okay. Your book talks about Robert A. Johnson. So he was a psychologist that I was able to look up. He's an author and trained analyst of Carl Jung's work. And in your book, you talk about how he believed there are 3 tiers of consciousness, which are the simple, the complex, and the transcendent. Can you explain what those are?
According to him?
Yes, and you. Well, really, I like your opinion on this.
Well, the simple is where you're the furthest you could be from integrating the opposites. And probably what you do is you just parrot what everybody else is doing. Kind of swept away by the collective consciousness.
It's like sheep.
Yeah, by fad and fashion.
That's why you need to be the sparkly one in the group.
So in addition to that, we could say that the simple level of consciousness, we are mostly unconscious and have little insight and awareness into ourselves and others. And because of this, we act primarily on our impulses, merely looking for ways to satisfy our desires. Their satisfaction is all that matters, and their level could be called ignorance is bliss. Now, at the complex level, we're less unconscious because we have a moderate amount of insight and awareness into self and others and the universe. The insights and awareness into self and others allow us to delay the gratification of impulses, and therefore we're able to achieve something more meaningful than just bodily satisfaction. Living at this complex level is desirable but also creates a problem in that the person at this level has too much insight and awareness to go back to the simple, but not enough to move on to the transcendent. So they haven't yet integrated. They are somehow hosting and honoring both, but they haven't reached that level of integration yet. But that level of integration requires time and effort. Like I'm thinking, in order for your brain to produce myelinated sheath, you have to focus on something for 10,000 hours. Okay, so in order to go from the simple to the complex to the transcendent requires a lot of commitment, a lot of dedication.
Okay, does having or developing faith help reconcile the opposing forces for more effectively?
I would say yes, because the conscious mind is the thought police. And if it doesn't believe in something, it dismisses it. So there's no ability to benefit from it. So if the conscious mind can have faith, faith allows the conscious mind to overcome a lot of its mindsets that it didn't even know it was developing, and it doesn't even know it has. And probably is not ever going to know all of them or be able to undo all of them. But if you have faith, you have an open mind, as people like to say. And in having that open mind, then you have the opportunity to be surprised, to discover a connection.
And it's quite an uncomfortable thing, at least it is for me, and it has been for me to really break through and have that faith and let go. And so I know everybody has their own experiences with that. But for anybody who is listening and feels uncomfortable, or there's times where they know they need to just let go, um, kind of step aside, having that ego step aside, have faith in your unconscious mind and allow things to happen as they will in a positive manner, it's a good thing. And it just continues.
Well, it got us to where we are. Okay, we haven't been conscious that long. All the thousands of years we've been around, the unconscious is what's kept us alive, what's allowed us to grow and transcend the adversity that we have overcome. Conscious awareness, knowledge, is the apple from the Garden of Eden, which then brings about dark forces.
Did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Yes.
Of course you do.
And it goes back to the ultradian and circadian cycles.
Okay.
So one of the things we have experienced is time change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I know how much that impacts so many people just to adjust that clock, moving it backwards or forwards 1 hour.
Mm-hmm.
So I want people to appreciate, as they can from a personal experience because of the time changes, what impact abusing those cycles and rhythms has on us. And after a while, we don't even notice it. So using that time change to help a person see, wow, just that 1 hour
An hour. That's a really good point.
has a big impact and takes a while to adjust to.
Yeah, that I guess I never really thought about that. That's a good point. Well, thank you for that. And thank you for joining Dr. Rini and I on this journey behind the curtain of letting destiny deliver. Join us next time as we will be discussing mindsets and how they can limit you or open doors. Remember, questions or comments are welcome below. Now ask yourself, what part of your life might destiny be trying to speak through right now? Keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, destiny isn't something you chase, it's something you allow. Until next time, be well.